When it comes to the competition between popular game series, you guys can probably list numerous examples such as Battlefield and Call of Duty, Final Fantasy and Tales of series, and so on. The stories behind the development are often fascinating because of the drama, and ultimately, we as gamers are the ones who benefit from having games to play and tea to sip. The rivalry between Dead Island and Dying Light series is no exception. Starting from their similarities as open-world action RPGs with a first-person perspective and a focus on melee combat, and of course, their differences that make one stand out from the other. Recently, Dead Island 2 was released after a 9-year delay, and on this occasion, let's compare it with Dying Light 2, which was released last year. In this video, we will not analyze which series is better, as it depends on each person's perspective, but instead, we will compare them to find similarities and differences to provide you with this information to make it easier to choose between one or both. Before watching this video, if you enjoy this content of Tipsy Tammy, please leave a like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest gaming content. First of all, you probably knew about Techland, Dying Light's developer who used to develop Dead Island and had some conflicts with the publisher Deep Silver. They eventually split and went on to develop a new IP, which is Dying Light, a zombie game that stands out with its parkour elements, making it a hit among gamers. The first installment was released in 2015, 1 year after Techland left the Dead Island project, and the sequel was released 7 years later. In contrast, Dead Island 2 had a long and troubled development process, and it was only recently released in April. It is safe to say that Dying Light was the great success that paved the way for the sequel. The game was published by Warner Bros. And Square Enix right after Techland left Deep Silver. With the success of the first game, they were able to release the sequel independently, with a massive open-world map that the developers claim would take 500 hours to complete 100%. The game has over 100 weapons, ranging from blunt and sharp melee weapons to ranged weapons and opportunity weapons. Additionally, they have been very generous with free content drops and updates, releasing a total of 26 DLCs. The road to release of Dying Light 2 is smooth, but Dead Island 2 has gained attention through its multiple delays. Gamers who have played the previous game crave for its release, while those who haven't are curious to see if the game can overcome development hell. First, let's analyze the combat elements of both games. Both games are action RPGs that mostly use melee weapons in combat. Therefore, both Dead Island 2 and Dying Light 2 have a massive arsenal of weapons, ranging from blunt and sharp melee weapons to environmental weapons such as battery, gasoline, bricks, glass bottles. The weapons can be upgraded and enhanced with elemental effects such as electricity, poison, fire. The poison mechanism in Dead Island 2 is similar to the bleeding mechanism, where the enemy's health gradually decreases when they are poisoned. Meanwhile, in Dying Light 2, the enemy takes additional poison damage. Overall, the melee combat in both games is well done, providing a satisfying feeling of chopping and slashing, but too much melee combat can become overwhelming. However, Dying Light 2 has fewer ranged weapons than the first game, such as shotguns and pistols, while Dead Island 2 seems to have more. Both Techland and Dambuster Studios aim to provide a satisfying feeling of chopping and slashing, as they believe that's what keeps gamers engaged. This feeling comes from each swing of the weapon and the resulting impact on the zombies. It should be noted that Dying Light 2 has excellent animation, allowing the zombies to be sliced in half or dismembered with each swing, making the blood splatter unrealistically. The gore factor may be too much, but is effective in creating a sense of satisfaction. Some viewers may recall the video in which they put hundreds of rubber bands on a watermelon and waited it to explode. The satisfaction in Dying Light 2 is similar to that way. Dead Island 2 is more realistic in this aspect. The finishing moves and dropkicks in Dying Light 2 are more impressive than in Dead Island 2 in my opinion. As mentioned earlier, gamers love the parkour elements in Dying Light 2. As an open-world game, Techland had to develop various movement mechanics to allow gamers to quickly move between locations to complete missions. Therefore, in addition to jumping, somersaulting, climbing obstacles, we can also enjoy the magnificent scenery below with a paraglider or use a grappling hook to jump over tall buildings. Regarding Dam Buster, they have reduced the open world aspect, so Dead Island 2 will be a hub world, where you only move between locations in a small area on the map. They have also reduced the transportation mechanism, which will be redundant in Part 2. The skill update mechanism in Dead Island 2 is now transferred to skill cards. Personally, I prefer this system over the skill tree in Part 1. Players can change cards anytime, anywhere, from which they create new attack combos that are suitable for button usage style, or to be more suitable for the types of weapons that players collect, each time serving different purposes of the players. Meanwhile, in Dying Light 2, the upgrade system is divided into two branches, one for parkour and one for combat. There is not much to say about this basic upgrade system. However, having many skills for players to gradually upgrade during the gameplay has shown depth. Many people who started with the Dying Light series in Part 2 may think they are not used to the parkour mechanism because of the limitation in speed and movement form. But this will be improved in the middle of the game, so just try more, and it will be worth it. However, many new players may also quit the game halfway because they cannot stand the dizzy feeling due to the narrow FOV, not to mention the camera shaking repeatedly with each jump and somersault. In pure combat games like the two main characters in this video, puzzle elements will be maintained at the lowest level. This means freeing gamers from brain-teasing moments, and instead, we can spend more time outside hacking and slashing, incidentally learning about the zombie horde that the developers has painstakingly built. So, we need to agree with each other one thing, that we're not here to unlock things, right? Therefore, both of these games have easy puzzle-solving mechanisms. In Dead Island 2, you mainly look for the power source to insert Circus Breaker, find the access card, unlock the water valve. The annoying thing here is the repetition. Personally, I'd rather not have it than have it repeated so often. As for Dying Light 2, it's about finding hints on the lock-picking documents, etc. There's not too much, but it's enough for me. Besides gameplay elements, the storyline is also important to gamers. The time of skipping dialogues in games is long gone, and we as gamers need to know what we're doing in the game, right? There are many zombie-themed games with excellent storylines such as The Last of Us and Resident Evil series, but Dead Island 2 and Dying Light 2 may be not among them. It's not denying that Techland did a great job in the first game, even better than in the second one. In Dying Light 2, players take on the role of Aiden, who is looking for his lost sister Mia. He goes through power struggles among factions in a devastated city until he discovers the painful truth about himself and his sister. The plot progression is basic, but at least players feel like they are following a logical storyline with a beginning and an end, with ups and downs forcing players to make choices. Well, we won't find that in Dead Island 2, where players play a character not much different from the other 5 characters in terms of the plot, even though they have different backgrounds. Dam Buster's difficulty here is understood as they only develop a single storyline, so the characters might have some different dialogues, but the plot won't be any different. Dead Island 2 aims for diversity in co-op, while Dying Light focuses more on personal experience, so maybe you won't like the storyline of the whole Dead Island series. Even after completing the game, you'll feel like you have only played 1/3. The problem with Dead Island 2 is that it creates a cliffhanger that players want to solve near the end of the game. This may be the developer's intention to pave the way for upcoming story DLC, but to be fair, it is rare for a game to leave the plot hanging like this to solve in the DLC. Dying Light 2 welcomes you to a desolate and devastated world a few years after the first game. In contrast, Dead Island 2 brings a very positive atmosphere in LA, inspired by the glamorous city of Los Angeles. Even though the pandemic is still raging, Dam Buster doesn't necessarily have to create a tragic scene. They want players to see the joy and comfort in difficulty circumstances, which has become the brand that Dead Island has built, making players want to return to them. So, it's difficult to evaluate which game is more beautiful, but if I had to choose a game with more detailed materials, it would definitely be Dead Island 2. Unlike Techland using their in-house C engine, Dambuster used Unreal Engine 5, even though this is their first time developing a game on this famous engine. From the large-scale scenes of Hollywood Hills burning, the large mansions of the wealthy, the dark sewers to the palm trees, swimming pools, everything shows sharp and detailed. It seems that Dambuster has determined that most of the game time is during the day, so they are even more meticulous to bring excellent graphics. On the other hand, we can completely understand why Dying Light 2 doesn't have such detailed graphics. With the world many times larger than Dead Island 2, to build detailed graphics, they need similar resources. Along with that is the optimization on PC, which is likely that older generation GPUs may not be able to meet the minimum level. Speaking of optimization issues, in the context of every nearly 3 games on PC with error after error, to the point where gamers have to admit, it's not easy for a newly released game to run smoothly on every setup. However, Dead Island 2 and Dying Light 2 are completely different. Both were released on both 8th and 9th generation consoles, which means they have more to do to ensure the game runs well on each system. At the time of its release, Dying Light 2 on PC suffered a huge amount of bugs and glitches no less than Cyberpunk or Fallout 76, which can be mentioned briefly as subtitle errors, characters' dialogue errors, and then were fixed by a few patches. So in 2023, you can completely rest assured to experience this game. In contrast, at the time of its release, Dead Island 2 hardly had any serious issues. Personally, when experiencing this game with the version for review units, I encountered 2 errors, but they were fixed in time before the release. As for the AI, well, you will encounter quite a few funny situations in both games.
Run.
1 hour later.
When it comes to zombie-themed games, we can't forget about the terrifying key characters. Yes, it's the enemies who will luckily receive our slashes. We can easily find similarities in some types of zombie in both games, like the Screamer and Howler both can call for reinforcement by screaming in your face. Crusher and Goon are both big and have wide range of attacks. Slobber is like Revenant, both release toxins from their mouths. In addition, the zombies in Dead Island 2 are all developed around 3 main types based on movement speed, including Shambler, Walker, and Runner. Dambuster's job here is quite simple. Imagine it's a brainstorming session to develop a zombie system, someone might say. Alright people, settle down. So, we already have walkers and runners, the runner is faster and better at dodging. And we have a variety of different elemental weapons, like fire, lightning, and poison. Oh, I got an idea! I'll apply elements to those 2 zombies. Not only increase the number of zombies, but also create a counter mechanism. Damn, I'm the best. Ta-da! So we have Spiky Walker, Spiky Runner, Hydration Walker, Incendiary Walker. Aside from these zombie games that lean more towards the gameplay, which is less than in Dead Island 2, the zombies in Dying Light 2 are designed to create a closer connections with the big idea of the pandemic disaster in the game. As fans of Dying Light already know, the Heron virus is a source of the epidemic that has spread to the people, causing them to undergo 4 stages of evolution in the body. Starting with virals, which can be considered as half-human, half-zombie beings, as they still retain some humanity, can climb over obstacles, and sometimes even feel free of death. Virals evolve into biters, which a more gruesome appearance, slower in movement, and gradually losing control. All they want to do is to bite healthy hosts to spread the disease. When biters are exposed to light for a long time, they will become degenerates, such as like their name. They move slowly, have slow attack speed, and are no longer a threat to gamers. They can easily be spotted in the morning. At the top of the food chain are the volatiles, fast and ferocious, ready to hunt down anything that stands in their way. Overall, gamers will usually feel more frightened and cautious of zombies in Dying Light 2 than in Dead Island 2. All in all, Dead Island 2 and Dying Light 2, each game has its own strengths and weaknesses. If you are looking for an easy game to vent your frustration by chopping and slashing, you should go for Dead Island 2. Or if you like parkour, zombies, open world, and versatile gameplay that gives you a lot to do, choose Dying Light 2. Or if you like this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up for Tipsy Tammy, and if you like this comparison series, leave a comment below with the 2 games you wanna see on the scales. See you again!